guys, welcome to another video. I'm so happy to see you. In today's video we're going to be talking everything annotating, why you annotate, where you annotate, what books you're doing, what products you're using, highlighting, coloring, underlining, pencil, pen, everything that you may need to know about annotating we're going to talk about today. First things first, before you get into annotating at all, here's a disclaimer. Annotating is not about the aesthetic. I know I'm about to show you some aesthetically pleasing things or examples or whatever the case may be, but annotating is specifically for you, whether you want to make it look all pretty and neat or you want it to be messy and super personal. It's all up to you. There's no right way to annotate, and it's not about other people seeing it. It's about you, your reading journey, what you're getting out of the entire annotating process. It's not about whether it looks a certain way. So I know that I might show you a couple things, or you might see stuff online that makes you feel like there's a lot of pressure involved with annotating, but that's completely not the case. You don't have to go into it thinking that you are going to do it wrong, because that's definitely the way that I started, and I was super worried and in my head about it and just convinced myself that I was going to make the book ugly or I was going to ruin my book. And you just can't think that way. You just have to go into it having fun and doing it to enhance your reading experience, not hindering your reading experience. Next thing is why you're annotating. So obviously you have to pick a book, you have to get the pen, pencil, whatever. We'll get to that later. But the biggest thing is why you're annotating. What is making you pick up the book, reading that quote and thinking, oh, I have to underline this, I have to tab this, whatever the case may be. I feel like when people ask why you annotate, a lot of people will just say like, oh, you just know, it stood out to me. And you may be thinking, okay, I don't get it, because you're not actually answering the question. So the way that I go about it is I kind of go into it with different things depending on every single book. So I'm going to give you a couple examples and how I annotated every single book so that you can see why I chose to annotate those things, why those things stuck out to me, why they're important for the book. Just kind of give you like the rundown of why for every single book, and then we'll get into the how and the aesthetic and all that kind of stuff. I've gone through all of my books and kind of gotten 3 key examples of why when I annotate. First, I have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This is book 1 in this series, and I annotated a lot in this book. Bunch of tabs everywhere. I did a bunch of underlining. There's some doodling in here, circling, the whole 9 yards. This is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is a Dark Academia book. I did a lot of underlining, and I only annotated in 2 colors, I believe. I think it's black and gray. I kept it super simple and didn't do any sort of doodling or circling. I kept it like super, almost like academic, going along kind of with this book. And then here I have The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and this was kind of a mess. So I did, if you can see, blue, red. I changed it up based on what was going on in the story. There's black in here too, and this was just me trying to piece together this backstory because it is a mystery, suspenseful thriller situation, and so I was just trying to understand what was going on. The most recent I have is the Encyclopedia of Fairies, and this one I annotated for a number of reasons. The reason I went into this book with like the tabs ready thinking I was going to annotate it is because I knew that the book was slow. I'd heard that this was a cozy fantasy, that the plot wasn't super, not exciting, but there wasn't a whole lot of craziness going on. So I went into this trying to enjoy the book to the highest ability, because I am someone that doesn't have the easiest time with cozy fantasies. I don't stay focused enough to really enjoy them. So I went into this book thinking I was going to annotate and ended up annotating because I really wanted to enjoy the book. I'd heard a lot of things about it and I felt like if I really gave it a chance I would enjoy it. So I made it kind of a whole experience. I have pinks and I have purples and like a dark magenta, tan, yellow, like a grayish blue. I went to town and made it all match. Things that made me laugh, things that made me upset, things that I felt were good in terms of story building. Just a bunch of random things, honestly. You know, there were things that are about a specific character, so I annotated about him because he was kind of a mystery going on. There's things about the fairy world, there are things about a specific fairy world, like specific subgroup of fairies, and I was a little confused, and I don't know much about Fae and all of their like subgroups, so I was annotating for that. Pink was stuff that was going on between the main character's relationship because there was a little budding romance going on. I doodled. I got kind of messy. Normally I go in with a little ruler when I'm underlining. With this I didn't, so there's squiggles in there. There's, you know, I think I have a little mouse drawing in here because someone is described as mousy. So there's a little doodle of a mouse in the corner. I really just went into it trying to have fun and trying to enjoy the experience, again, because I wanted to like this book, and I really, really did. So that's why I ended up doing this. I've been annotating for this book. The next book was, again, Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and I went into this book specifically treating it like it was a textbook. I had the dark tabs, I had a black pen, I had a little ruler, and I just treated this as if I was studying, because in this world specifically, you're learning about the secret societies of Yale. So not only are you at a very amazing university, you're learning a lot about their secret societies. So there's a lot of rules, there's a lot of backstory, there's a lot of stuff that's in Latin, stuff that's in different languages. There's a lot of things that are reference material, you know, even all of the tabs. It's kind of hard to see because of the way I have my light, but if you can see, there's tabs all on the top specifically, like these that you're seeing, these little notches. Those are all specifically the rule book, and you're reading, it's kind of different. There's like regular text, and then there's these rule book pages where it's specifically referencing either like a diary entry or the rules of some society. You know, there's multiple, and so I highlighted those or tabbed those because I needed to look back at them for reference because I was confused. So I annotated those because, again, I needed to have that for reference. And then throughout the rest of it, I don't remember exactly why. Oh, the other ones was really good quotes, so things that made a lot of sense to me, things that I wanted to look back on. I mean, there have been a couple quotes from here that I've written, either I put it on our wall or I've made it like the background of one of my things before, like my computer, my phone, stuff like that, and that's what I annotated from here. So I really treated it like a textbook and used the majority of it for reference. This last book is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and I went into this book knowing that I was going to be confused because I had read the back summary and I had heard that this book was very overwhelming. So in this story, you are following many different characters over a repeating time loop timeline, and so you can easily get confused when it comes to this book. Following someone trying to kill another person, Evelyn Hardcastle specifically, and you're trying to figure out who is the killer. Definitely crazy. We have multiple things underlining here, just trying to figure out what the heck was going on. So that is why we ended up annotating what we did from this one. Now, all of that being said, because that was definitely word vomit, it is kind of hard not to just tell you to annotate what you feel you need to annotate, because again, that is kind of the overall consensus, but I hope that those examples gave you an idea. Now that you have those examples, I want to say what I use when it comes to annotating. So like you saw, there's a lot of different things that I have used. We have tabs, we have highlighters, we have pens and pencils and little rulers, so we'll kind of go into everything. So I think my number one used thing are my tabs. I use colorful tabs. They are just this humongous pack of colorful tabs that I got off of Amazon. This is technically 2 of those packs put together because I got one for both Sam and I, and then we moved in together and now they're just one big pile. But again, super colorful, super cute little plastic tabs. And normally I will go through and use whatever strip of them matches the book the best. So this is actually the strip that I used for this book, and it's kind of hard for you to see how it matches because all the flowers are a little small, but this is what I felt matched this book the best, so that's what I used for this. So when it comes to tabbing, I will do it as close to the book as possible and as matching to the book as possible so that it's not super messy crazy, because that will definitely deter me from annotating. So if you can see, when it comes to the actual tabs being lifted off of book, if you're looking at the book straight on, you almost couldn't see that it's tabbed. You have to look at it from an angle, because again, I just don't like the look of a bunch of tabs hanging out of the book. With this, they are almost completely flat. You can't see them almost at all. You have to be flipping through the book to see where I tabbed. Like you can see here that there's all those lines, but otherwise you wouldn't be able to tell. Now, when it comes to highlighting, I don't feel super strong about these highlighters, but they are the ones that I have. I think there are better ones out there, so don't necessarily quote me on these, but these are the ones that I use. The issue I have with them is they're a little too potent. I wish they were a little more translucent, because I think they kind of go through the pages a little too much. These are the Altitude highlighters. They're super cute and tiny, and they were originally purchased because they were pastel looking, but again, I think they're just a little bit too strong overall, but these are the ones I use. They still work just fine. Now, in terms of pens, I have the mega pack in terms of the pens I use. So these are the Papermate Inkjoy. I got these for school. Sam was super kind and surprised me with them because I was starting a difficult program that I'm no longer in, but I was a little worried about it. So she was trying to help me in terms of getting my notes and everything. These are really expensive. That's why they weren't going to get purchased in the first place. So I'm not saying you need anything other than a pen or pencil, obviously. There's so many colors, and normally I do try to go whatever's matching the book, but the other thing I will say about these pens is that they are definitely on the sharper side. I would recommend using whatever type of pen you know that you like, but if you can see, these are a little sharper, and I have noticed that it's easy to start to rip the book if you're not paying attention. I have a pretty light hand when I'm writing, but if you're heavy-handed, I wouldn't recommend using these specifically because they are definitely pointy and you're going to rip through your page. The last thing that I'm going to say is I recommend some sort of little ruler, a straight edge. If you get a pack like this, they technically are all on a little straight edge, so maybe this will work for you. I don't like to write on these because I have found that the pens I use have so much like free ink that I will get ink along the side and it'll smear along the page, so I like to have something separate that's not going to be near my book. So I ended up getting these little rulers. They're tiny. You can see they're only half rulers, but they work perfectly for inside a book because they fit really nice. Obviously, if you're using a big whole ruler, like you're gonna be out to here and it's gonna be a little awkward. So I recommend getting a smaller ruler if you can. I think this is just get off of Amazon, or maybe I got this from like a craft store. I don't really remember. I hope you learned a little bit of something from this video. It can definitely be overwhelming and a little bit intimidating to start writing in your book because you don't want to ruin it. So I totally understand being a little worried or cautious when going into this, because I definitely was. I didn't want to ruin my book at all, and there have definitely been books that I've looked back at my annotations and kind of cringed a little bit because I felt like it was a little messy. So again, it is what it is. You're going to do a little oopsie. Even now with all of these materials that you're seeing, I still have smudges in my books. I still don't make a perfect line. I still have to redo tabs. So it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be Pinterest ready every single time you do it. But I do think that it has really changed the way that I read. And I definitely don't do this for every book. There are plenty of books that I don't do this for. If not the majority of books, I do not annotate for. But for the books that while I'm reading, I do get that urge, or I go into it thinking that I need annotating for whatever reason, these things have really helped me and have really amplified my ability to understand the book and digest it in a better way rather than kind of blowing through it and not getting the full experience from these books. So I highly recommend annotating. I highly recommend looking into any of these things that I've said or coming up with your own. I mean, perfectly fine to just use pencil and, you know, a sticky note. It does not matter. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. If anything, I forgot to show, but I also use clear post-it notes sometimes, and those are really nice because then you could see the page still and you could write along the margins, and that's really good so that you're not interfering with your book or like being able to read back, but you can also just take it off and you're not actually writing on your book. So I recommend those two if you really don't want to put pen to paper but you have the urge to annotate. That way you can write without it getting in the way of your book. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you so much, and bye!